In terms of differentiation, it's you need to treat it like a whole package because your product is only 10 or 20% of the entire equation, right? So you need to have the GTM team needs to be stronger. Your brand needs to be stronger. This investment required in terms of how do you stand out from the crowd. Even simple things like your website. There's a huge difference between a mediocre website and a great looking website. It requires a lot of effort for you to build a really polished, really great website. And even simple things like a blog content quality, there's a huge difference. You can that is a you need to start differentiating in everywhere. If you look at some of the great companies, you can tell straight away, right? The quality reflects everywhere. So you need to getting to that level. That is where the experience and funding and everything and the team, everything comes into place.
Hello and welcome to the Startup Operator Podcast. I'm Roshan Karyappa. If you're new here to this side of the podcast sphere, welcome aboard. We curate insights from India's best founders, operators, and investors. Learn all of the nuances of building and scaling a startup. On this episode, we host Saravana Kumar, the founder and CEO of Kovai. Kovai is a special story and one that really piqued my interest. They've bootstrapped their way to over $10 million in revenue, and while most companies have a hard enough time building and scaling one product, Kovai has four. They have customers across the globe with their headquarters based in not Chennai or Bangalore, but in Coimbatore, which is more famous for its automobile and manufacturing industry. In this conversation, I speak to Saravana about his journey, his proven formula for going from idea to product to company, and beating competition in a fragmented market, all of the other nuances that go into building a successful SaaS startup. Before we dive in, if you like our content, don't forget to rate and review us on your favorite platforms. It really helps more people discover us. And also, a shout out to our sponsors. This episode is sponsored by Park Avenue. More about them later in the podcast. For now, listen in. Hi, Sarvana. Welcome to the Startup Operator Podcast. Thank you so much for making the time.
Hey, thank you, Roshan. Thanks for having me on the show. Really excited to chat about the experience here.
Yeah, I've been meaning to talk to you and specifically learn about Kovai as well because I think it's such a different sort of a company. It's built in a very different way compared to, the kind of startup activity that you see today, right? And also you started in very different times. I think 2011, 2012, the B2B SaaS specific ecosystem was very, very nascent as well. And we didn't have that kind of enthusiasm or even optimism as we have right now. So I wonder, having seen these last 10 years up close, right? If you can take us through, what the evolution has been through your eyes.
Yeah, sure. As you rightly said, we are not really, I don't know, there is no definition for startup, right? So we are over 10 years now. So we started back in 2010-11 period. And I think I just need to give a bit of history, to understand the context. So I'm coming from a technical background. I still love technology side of things. Even today, I get deeply involved on the product side more than GTM and other sides. I spotted a problem. I worked as a consultant for 10 years in this specific area called Microsoft BizTalk Server, and I just identified a bunch of gaps when it comes to large enterprise customers. And that is how, out of my own passion, I started building something. The original intention was not to, create a company or anything. It's more of you saw a problem and let's solve it. That is how it's all started. And I just, I spent about 18 months. I went part time that time with my current employer. That time I was working for Fidelity Investments. And it took me about 18 months to build the project on part time, working on weekends and here and there. So it took a long time. And then I launched the product. As I said, whether the ecosystem was there or not, I was not aware. Somebody coming from technical background, you can imagine nothing about business world, right? Forget about the SaaS and startup or anything. You don't know anything about the business side of a lot of people. They know how to build a product, but very rarely you see somebody who can take it. And getting money from anybody is a really hard job, right? That's where you drop off. So in my case, I think what worked out is, when I look back now, how did it happen? A lot of things happened organically without even me realizing I'm actually doing GTM actions. For example, like I'm a heavy blogger and not, on today's terms, like where people write only for content marketing and all kind of crap. I'm genuinely, I had a very good blog, personal blog. I've been writing since 2004 on this specific topic. So I written, I think recently the team did an audit and that I written like 800
Wow.
articles on the particular technology. And this is out of interest. It's nothing to do with, like, okay, let's put a strategy, content marketing, SEO, nothing of that sort. So that is one example. Like when I launched the product in 2011, it only took me a single blog post to get the initial customer attention. So the first customer came all the way from Hong Kong. I don't have any connection with them. They just, read the blog, and the problem is also real. So they reached out, and then, they became our customers. And I'm also very involved on the community side of things. So again, this is, it's no plan of GTM action or anything. I genuinely like to, go speak in small user groups, technical forums, and I visited, like a different country. Being based out of London, the advantage is, I can go speak in Sweden, Norway, Netherlands, and those kind of areas. And that eventually became, every time I go speak, people became aware of the product, and then eventually they become customers. So the bottom line is, is like, even though the SaaS ecosystem is not there, I was also not, focused on anything specific like that. All these things which I did intuitively, helped us to acquire those early customers, and then we ramped up from there gradually. Yeah.
Fantastic. So it's like a classic product person's tale, right? I mean, you found a problem that you wanted to solve and solved it for a wide enough community, and soon some of them started paying you, and then it organically grew into business. So that's amazing. But it's quite different the way they build businesses today, right? I mean, today I often joke that even before there is an MVP out in the market, there's already 15-member or 20-member team. There's already maybe like a 200 or 300K check that they have already, and I'm not saying one is right or the other is not optimal or something, but it's a very different way of looking at business, right? And you have been an investor yourself, right? When you compare these two modes of building businesses, let's say the classic bootstrapped way of building like you, and the whole VC funded or institution funded way of building that is favored today, what are some of the pros and cons, and is it like a hard choice between one to another, or is there like a middle path as such?
Okay, as you mentioned, there's both got pros and cons, and I think what I would like to recommend is not all businesses are suitable for a bootstrap scenario. So in our case, I just want to give an example. Like it worked out because of various reasons. The product itself is a very niche market. The Microsoft, because we are building a tool which sits on top of Microsoft BizTalk server. So the Microsoft BizTalk server, Microsoft themselves, they got only about 12,000 customers worldwide using this particular product. So it's a very niche area. So if you look at this, there's not enough competition because it's not worthwhile for some big guys to come and build anything on this particular niche, because it's a total addressable market is not attractive for them. But from a bootstrap guy's perspective, that's a perfect scenario, because you'll be happy, like even if you make few millions, it's a big bucks, right? Like so in that case, it's a perfect scenario for being doing something as a bootstrapper. And the second reason is, okay, why do you need money, right? Okay, of course you need money to do anything, so you to cover your own cost, and the building stuff, it's expensive. Even if you manage to hire somebody at a reduced cost, you still need to pay them money, and you need to figure out a GTM strategy, how you're going to take it to market. All those things requires money to push the bar. So in my case, I did it more like I was working part time in London. That is important because you're paid reasonably well, and that is enough for me to sustain and also keep pushing the product. Only are missing on the savings side, so the risk factors are low, and also the other factor is the ticket size of the product is also fairly high. Like we're talking about like a $10,000 checks for each customers. So once you close 2-3 customers, you have enough cash flow to run the business for a few more months. But if you're trying to build a business like something like like $100 per month product or something, then like you need to spend a lot of money to acquire the customers. And the biggest thing with SaaS is it's upfront capital. That's why you do LTV, CAC. The majority of the time, you need to spend like at least. Just to give an example, like for you to acquire like $100 per month customer, you probably need to spend $1,200. So you, as a bootstrapper, you may not have that kind of money to do it. So the lesson here is, you need to be careful. Like both the routes are okay, depending on the problem space you are taking, whether it is sustainable as a bootstrapper, and also the time factor as well. Bootstrapping will take time. There is no shortcut because you are growing organically step by step. You need to be prepared for at least 3-5 years journey. But on the other side, if the problem space you're taking is there is it's a kind of a red ocean and there's a lot of competitors, you need to spend money to acquire customers, then you don't have a choice. Basically, you need to raise fund, and that's the way you can take it forward.
Right. You work with enterprises, right? Large enterprises. In fact, I mean, the first Document 360 app that you built itself was for enterprises. And since then, you built multiple products as well. We'll talk about that. But specifically, working with enterprises, what are those nuances while productizing or while selling to enterprises that people are not aware of?
If you look at from outside world, like, okay, imagine you want to sell to somebody like Shell or BBC or some big guys, and I managed to sell to them even when either I was alone, like, or we had a very small team. The core thing here is, like, it will come down to the problem you're trying to solve. You need to have like a really good product, and that's really essential in an enterprise world. In case of that BizTalk 360, probably nobody was else solving that problem. We are the only ones solving that problem, and they don't have a choice. And it all came inbound. Basically, we still, like, selling outbound and reaching and then selling is a difficult task if you don't have a brand and if you don't have a bigger team to do it. The bottom line is, at the end of the day, you're selling to some human being inside that enterprise. That is a key message. It's not the entire company going to bet on something, right? Maybe one or two guys who got interested in your product, they like your product, and they can see the value proposition inside, and they typically take it, and then like they recommend it inside. That's how the enterprise deals are typically done, unless otherwise you have like a really large deals, 100K, 200K. That is a different ball game. But medium, like a mid range, like 100 to 20, sorry, 10K to 25K ticket size, you can still close the enterprise deals via inbound, as long as you got the right product to sell to that audience.
Right. And what is your process of going from idea to product? Because you've done that 4 times. People struggle to do it once, but then you've done it 4 times. So obviously, you should have some sort of a learning and formula, right? In terms of, hey, I'm going to do this 1, 2, 3 steps and then get to this particular milestone. And if that happens, then we're on the right path. So could you give us your formula for going from idea to product?
Yeah, sure. I think all the four products are at different journeys. There is not one single playbook you can pick up, but I'll give you some basic criteria. So the number one thing is, you need to solve a real problem. That is a mistake a lot of people do. Like, the problem statement needs to be validated completely. And then once you have like a solid understanding of the problem statement, then it's easy to take the next steps. So in terms of the first product, BizTalk 360, I mentioned, I that's one product where I am the, most of the time you need to be the customer of that problem. That in that case, it will, exactly the pain points what end user will face, and that makes everything easy. And we were actually, we did multiple products, like there are failed products as well. You're only seeing the successful products because any multi-product company, even at a Microsoft level or Google level, you might have seen they shut down a lot of their products, right? Because you start and only, like not all of them can be successful. So in our case, what I felt worked out well is, if we are customers of our own problem, those products succeeded well, because we know the problem space well and we are able to do it. Document 360 is a classic example, because we were struggling to write knowledge based software for our enterprise products. And then we were looking in the market and we identified a gap, and then that is where we felt, okay, there's a big gap in the market, and that worked out, and it's one of the successful products in the portfolio. In a similar way, last 2 years we were investing in a product called Churn 360, a customer success product that again came as a experience running the customer success team internally for last almost a decade. So we know the pros and cons, and what needs to be done, and that's going to help us to build a product that's right for the audience. That is on the product side. And the second side, you also need to understand the market, because market is something not which you cannot switch once you enter. So you need to be careful about, clear about the market you're entering. You need to figure out the GTM strategies much earlier. For example, Document 360, we started both the product development and then the GTM on the same day. January 2018 is when we started. So we started both parallelly. Like the one team, the engineering team was focused on building the product, and then the GTM team was focused on content. And we know SEO and content will take a long time, and we invested 18 months worth of content even before we launched the product. So that is another strategy. You need to be careful, because if you wait too long, then it takes the product is ready, and then you're trying to figure out how do you go to the market. So it's better to start building parallelly. And also the team is, everybody will say that the team is pretty crucial. When we launch a new product, so we got the luxury of pulling a team internally, at least the core team, the starting team. We can pull the 10 or 15 people required to start that new product, and then we can kick off. If you don't have that, then you need to focus on building the right team. At the initial days, you don't need to have too many people. It's more about having a small group of people. It's like a Jeff Bezos saying, not more than the two pizza rule. If you buy two pizza, that should be sufficient for the team. So because you need to be very agile, you can't go through that lot of red tapes in terms of reviews and back and forth and this and that. So it's very important to build a really good team at the early days. Yeah, there are a lot of things, but I think these are some of the core things I will say it's essential from going from zero to idea to revenue stage. Yeah.
Right. When you work with enterprises, right, oftentimes there is a tendency for large enterprises to treat you as an IT services company, right? Obviously, because they will have their own requirements and you can't really sell off the shelf products to them, right? I mean, they will have a long list of customizations, and some of your engineering or significant part of your engineering bandwidth is going into that. But at the same time, you have to balance your own vision of where you want to take the product, right? And considering you work with these large enterprises, I wonder, how do you balance both of these things, keeping the customer happy, but also recognizing that you have a certain vision for your product?
Yeah, sure. I think the first thing is, you need to be very careful. You're not going down that route of servicing some customer requests. So we experienced quite a lot in our journey, and the way we do it is, if the request is pretty generic, it's not very customer specific request, and that's something on our roadmap at some point. But if we can prioritize it to close the deal, we will take it. If it's something very customer specific scenario, it's not going to be useful for anybody else apart from this particular customer, or even a small segment of a customer. You need to, as a product company, you need to focus on a wider audience. Whatever you're building should be useful for a larger audience. So you need to make a judgment call, definitely if it's a single customer benefit, we will not do it. We'll simply politely reject it. Even if we lose a customer, it's better off to move on rather than getting stuck in that one customer and saving them for 6 months, because for your time is crucial. In fact, I have one customer, in the very early days, they came with a lot of requests. In fact, they paid for us to prioritize and do things. Say for example, I think 80% of what they requested, it made sense for us to do it, and we just reprioritized in terms of what we need to build, and we did it and we delivered, and they're still our customers nearly after 10 years. The 20% of what the requirement, we simply said we can't do it, and then we didn't do it. And also you need to be careful about making sure, even if they pay to build some stuff, they don't own any IP. The company as a product, we own all the IPs, and it's very clean. Basically, they're only buying the product and nothing else. So yeah, these are some of the things.
Right. These days in B2B SaaS, I mean, if you find a niche, there will surely be another 10, 20 people attacking that specific niche, in a matter of years, if not months, right? So I wonder, how do you stay differentiated? How do you always stay ahead of the competition?
Yeah, I think today, the competition is pretty intense. I think 10 years ago, it was difficult to build products. And today, a lot of things changed in the last, 5, 6 years. Today, you can build a world-class enterprise product with a small team and with a less budget as well. Thanks to AWS and Azure and GCPs, you can build like a world-class infrastructure, paying pretty much even free as well. Like there's a lot of free credits for up to 100K and things like. So it became very easy to build products, but that also impacted. Acquiring customers became very expensive now. Today, because of too many players. The people, 4 or 5 people, college graduates, they just assemble themselves and they're just able to build a product. I think in terms of differentiation, it's you need to treat it like a whole package, because your product is only like 10 or 20% of the entire equation, right? So you need to have the GTM team needs to be stronger. Your brand needs to be stronger. This investment required in terms of how do you stand out from the crowd. Even simple things like your website. There's a huge difference between a mediocre website and a great looking website. It requires a lot of effort for you to build a really polished, really great website. And even simple things like a blog content quality, there's a huge difference. You can that is a you need to start differentiating in everywhere. If you look at some of the great companies, you can tell straight away, right? The quality reflects everywhere. So you need to getting to that level. That is where the experience and funding and everything and the team, everything comes into place. And of course, with experience, you have option to experiment with a lot of channels, acquisition channels. Maybe you have the privilege of experimenting with a small fund, maybe something new. So I think it's a new game basically. It's you need to adopt and then learn from the market and do it. I'll say, you need to treat everything as a whole pack. It's the product is only about 25% of the whole equation.
It's very interesting coming from a product person yourself. We often talk about thought leadership and brand and so on, but then I think very organically you have done both of them, right? I mean, you just mentioned for instance 800 articles. I mean, and these are deep technical articles as well. If someone else is looking to sort of emulate this success for themselves, right? I mean, they genuinely want to build some thought leadership and build a brand around being an expert around a particular problem solution, right? What is your advice for them?
Yeah, I think it's a very simple equation. Basically, it's a time versus money, right? Okay, when you have time, you don't have money. When you have money, you don't have time, right? It's a very simple formula. So if somebody is trying to build it from scratch, like when they wanted to do, they will have plenty of time but not enough money. So all they need to do is just focus on building high quality content, be consistent. You build up your exactly what I did. That 800 articles I didn't write overnight. It may be like a 6, 7 years worth of content, right? Like so yeah, that's a formula there. Like you need to be patient if you're going to be you can't have both. So you need to be, if you're going down that route, give quality, write high quality content in your specific niche, slowly become a thought leader in that particular niche. It takes time, but if you do it consistently, today you might see a lot of LinkedIn influencers, right? They keep writing every day consistently. There are some interesting stories. These guys build up the entire business just through LinkedIn influencer content. So you can achieve it. If you have the time, you just invest in the right way and build up the assets required to help your business.
This episode of the Startup Operator podcast is brought to you by Park Avenue. Now that we're all back at the office meeting colleagues and clients, it's time to ditch those PJs and look sharp with Park Avenue's range of 100% cotton, wrinkle-free shirts. They're super easy to maintain and keep you looking fresh through the day. So my fellow startup operators, visit the Park Avenue store on myraymond.com and check out the new wrinkle-free shirt collection. Right. I think one of the key things that can make a difference in any growing business is customer success, right? I mean, while sales can acquire that customer, as you mentioned, LTV is such an important thing, right? And even net retention also, making sure that this customer lasts for the next 3 to 5 years, and then grows at a significant percentage every year. And so, considering you've also built this customer success product, Churn 360, what are some two or three insights that you have uncovered from doing CS for these various products over the years that could be useful for people who are listening?
Yeah, okay. Typically, like buying the product is one thing, and then whether the customers are using it actively, whether they're getting value out of the product is the number one metric. We all need to measure actively, like, because a lot of times what happens is people buy it, and then they never log in. We have seen scenarios where they never log in, and the if the usage metrics is pretty low, you need to define exactly what are the value propositions or aha moments in your product. So for example, document 360, if somebody has signed up but they never created any articles, right? Then they're not getting any value out of the product. And if they haven't configured certain things, like they customize their knowledge base, or they invited their team members, you need to have like a checklist of items, like where you think we have a very deep analysis on the product usage, and what we consider as a success. So you need to the goal is you need to make your customers successful, and you need to make them win. Only then you can win. Otherwise, typically, like over a period, like they will churn, and the churn is a big problem today. As I mentioned, you spend a lot of money to acquire a customer, and if you can't retain them over a period of time, at least to you need to get past that initial customer acquisition cost, right? So if you spend like $1,200 to acquire a customer at $100, they need to be with you at least for 15 months or more to get the value, to get a return on that customer. So today we invest quite a lot. Not only us, I think any SaaS company today. That's also the reason why we picked up Churn 360 as the next product, because everybody wants to do subscription business today. Right from even traditional businesses, they wanted to do a subscription business, and nobody wants to do the traditional business of selling one time, and every year you need to start from scratch. Today, even things like toiletries and shaving and everything, they want to do subscription. Tea, coffee, even I think Starbucks subscription, and like everybody wants to get into subscriptions. So we saw, that's why we saw the opportunity. To the future, retention NRR will be the number. Not in the future, even today, NRR is the number one metric for the SaaS companies, and it becomes super critical for you to closely monitor your customer behavior and keep tweaking. We do a lot of activities month on month to keep tweaking and making sure we bring that churn rate, logo and revenue churn rate as low as possible continuously. Certain things you cannot control. That is, there's voluntary churn and involuntary churn. Somebody going out of business, or somebody bought it without seeing the right fit, you can't control. But if it's the right fit, you need to make sure you can do it. And also, where people miss out is instead of checking at the later stage, you need to check your sales at the marketing and sales message at the beginning as well. Lot of times churn happens because you sold it to the wrong customer in the first place. You need to avoid that. We have done that mistake ourselves. So it's better, you define your ideal customer profile correctly and make sure you're selling to only your ICPs. Otherwise, the churn will be inevitable over a period. Yeah.
Right. So focus on adoption, make sure that the users have met certain product goals, and be preemptive about this rather than wait until churn happens to think about what you could have done, right? So one other thing that Kovai has done really well is growing through partners, and this entire partnerships or channel strategy, right, is something often afterthought, right, for a lot of SaaS companies. They think that once we reach a certain critical size, I mean, that is when we will become relevant for partners and so on. Now, is that true? If it is not true, then how would you advise building this whole partnership muscle within the company?
I won't say you jump on and start building partnership right away, because a partnership channel is one of the difficult channels to crack. if somebody is maybe it will depend on the industry to industry as well. Generally, what we felt is, it's a very difficult, because both the parties should see the value. Like, that's a general principle in a partnership. If only one person is getting benefited, then it will eventually fail. It need to be structured in a way where both the parties are getting benefited. That's where it will work. It worked out well for our enterprise products, because we work with a lot of consulting companies who build solutions on Microsoft platform. So for them, there's the commission, the partnership commission is one small part of it. But from a customer point of view, they can solve their customer problems in a much better way using the products, and by recommending the right products to their customers. That's what worked out well for us. And we have about 40-50 partners across the world, and they contribute to significant revenue to our base. But it will take time. You need to first close the partner. You need to work with them very closely. You need to mentor them, and it's a trial and error over a long period of time. It's a time consuming process. So for somebody who's starting, if you haven't worked out some other channels, like organic, SEO, or paid, your focus should be more on that rather than, jumping and working on the partnership. And also, some products may not be suitable for a partnership model, because again, it's a mutual benefit, right? So if your revenue itself is, say, like, only you're making only $1,000 a year or something like that, even if you give $200 to your partner, it's not really attractive for them, right? Or sometimes the partnership will only work when your deal sizes are significant, and then the partners can also get benefited out of it.
Right. No, this whole motion of build in India and sell to the world. I mean, today it's become fairly common, but again, even if you were to look at 2012, 2013, even 2014, I would say it was this classic build in India, sell to Indian customers, then maybe move to Southeast Asia, then move to Middle East or Europe, and then US, right? I mean, that entire journey. Today, I mean, people are, global from day one, or day zero, I should say. Having been global in your journey itself, what are some of the nuances that you notice when you're selling to global customers from day one?
Okay, I think if you look at any SaaS companies, of course, the structure pretty much will be like, some 40% will come from US, 30% from Europe, and maybe the remaining from rest of the world. The main reason is, like, it used to be, things are getting better, but selling in India is really hard job. Especially software. 10-15 years ago, people thought software is free, right? Like, they never thought, you need to pay for a software. Even I was making a joke, they don't even pay for operating system licenses and office licenses. It's, piracy is big used to be big in India, but now things are improving. But that's where the US generally got a tendency of buying rather than building. That is one thing where US market is much more attractive than selling to India. Even in Southeast Asia, same mindset. It's very pretty hard to sell to Southeast Asian countries. The other thing is, today everybody accepts it. You can buy from anywhere. 10 years ago, maybe the US companies may be biased to buy only from American vendors. But today they understand, there are great products coming from everywhere, India and Israel and pretty much worldwide, the whole startup boom. So today, as long as the product is solving my problem, you're ready to experiment with that product and buy that product. And also people switched from, a big monolithic applications which did a lot of things to much more granular applications where, solving one or two problems extremely well. So, even a company of our size, we have over 100 SaaS products to run our business. So that also means people opened up to buy more products, and, there's a lot of new opportunities coming in terms of, you can take one small problem and build a extremely good product out of it. So examples are Calendly and DocuSign and all those things. It's a very simple problem, but, there could be $1 billion companies out of that. So the various factors, and maybe that's the reason, today you can build not only India, you can build it from anywhere and sell it to anywhere. And also the whole digital marketing and the ability to find end customers through just through Google search and inbound traffic. So all those things contributed and changed the ecosystem at the moment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think COVID also helped a great deal in that specific regard, right? I mean, through virtualization, remote, and digitization, and so on. So up to, I think, up to a certain.
Yeah, I think COVID actually, okay, the digitization was in the agenda for a lot of companies. Everybody want to digitize everything, whatever they have, but they had a very long roadmap. Companies were thinking of 5, 10 years journey to get there. COVID accelerated everything basically. That's why there was no choice. For example, the Zoom and Teams and things like that. Maybe it may be on a roadmap for larger companies to roll out over like a 4 or 5 years period. But once COVID hit, they were panicking, and it's a more survival mode, and they need to roll out things much more faster. There were errors, but they everybody okay with that, and that is what happened, and that accelerated the entire digital adoption. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I was saying at least up until a certain ticket price, I don't think people necessarily feel like, okay, they have to meet people over the table and then shake hands and then close the deal, right? I mean, they're comfortable closing remotely as well up to a certain ticket size. As long as, you have the brand, you can provide support and so on. So, you're an accidental entrepreneur, right? I mean, like you said, you didn't mean to build this company, successful company, and so on. You were just a product person trying to solve a problem for a community, right? Today you have a team, right? And they have been able to solve all of these many different problems and so on. So I wonder if you can, give advice on how to hire this team, right? I mean, if there is a product or technical person who's listening to this, may not understand really all that well about sales, may not understand about, let's say, customer success, etc., right? How can that person hire a really good salesperson? How can they hire a really good customer success person, so on and so forth, to sort of build their dream and make their vision a reality?
Yeah, I think in my case, okay, what worked out well is every single function in the business I have done it myself. When you are the very early stages, when a bootstrap founder, you don't have the resources or funding to go and hire people. So in my case, up to first 35 customers, I was alone. I did everything basically. I built the product, I supported the product, I did the finance, I did everything up to 35 customers. So I think even after that, we were only 5 people until we reached 150 customers. So again, you are, even though you have expanded to a small team, I'm doing a lot of multiple things. So the main point there is, once you do something, right? Once you know how to sell, then when you're hiring, you know exactly what kind of questions to ask, whether that person will be able to do what you are doing for to close the deals, whether that's mapping. That is what worked out in my case, especially technical guys coming from that is one route. But on the other side, if you're a funded company and you have enough money to burn, then you also have money to experiment as well, right? So in that case, you probably you're not going to do all the tasks yourself. You can go and hire a couple of people as an experiment, and roughly what is required. Okay, you need to get somebody from sales. Okay, 1 or 2 years experience. That guy has done it before. We are building a product. You ask him to sell it, and let him figure out how to sell and how to set up those processes, etc. If it works out, things might work out, might not work out. You just keep on, okay, keep the ones that are working, and just part away with the people that are not working. I think those are two things I can think of. Yeah.
Right. I want to come back to the point about startup building, right? I mean, the two different paths, or very obvious two different paths that kind of exist. Because when you say that, you manage 35 customers alone, or that five of you manage 150 customers, somewhere, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I've spent about 15 years in startups, and, startups meant doing more with less, right? 14, 15 years back. But then, I mean, today, I mean, we have so much of excess, whether it's in terms of, let's say, more people available to build a product, or more money to run all of these experiments and so on and so forth. What do you see are some of the drawbacks of that, and what are funded startups doing wrong? I mean, what should they learn from journeys like yourself?
Sure. I think the general principle is the smaller the better. by adding more people, theoretically it may sound like, like you add more people and you'll accelerate everything, but that doesn't work that way. It actually, it will slow down significantly how, you can do things. The smaller, like it's always better to have like a very focused smaller teams. Even in our case, like that is how we structured it. Even though we are, close to 250 people company, so every team is only about, okay, document 360 is bigger, but the other teams are all like, 50 people or somewhere around that region. Because once you have like a lot of people, it adds a lot of overheads in terms of even explaining something to a team is difficult, to make sure everybody understands it and what you're trying to achieve. So generally, it will slow down things. In terms of, the funded companies, the common mistake, the number one mistake what I've seen them doing is scaling prematurely. You can, even if you have money, you need to take it one step at a time. Like just because I have few millions in my bank account, you go and hire like 20 people and at one go. It's very difficult to, like align them correctly, and then, mentoring them, and it, like certain things will take time. So you need to be, patient, and, take things slowly. I think, yeah, premature scaling is one big problem what I see with the funded companies, because they got investor pressure and they want to use the money. They need to show something they are doing, and the easy option for them is to go hire like bunch of people and say they are doing the, your roadmap may not be clear. You're still experimenting things. Maybe you're not ready for scale. So yeah.
But Kovai is again a kind of a complex structure, right? I mean, you have four different products, and I've heard you say that you run these four different products as four different companies, except for maybe like some horizontal functions like accounting or HR, right? Every one of these products have their own sort of sales, go-to-market, product teams, and so on. How do you manage four products? I mean, people struggle to manage one product, right? So how do you run this as a CEO? What are you looking? What are some of the dashboards or metrics, or what is your typical day like? How do you run these four products in four different companies?
Yeah, I think the four products are run like a four independent companies. You can think of like a group CEO, right? Okay, okay. If I want to give an example, let's take Richard Branson, right? Richard Branson runs 300 something companies. The whole Virgin Group got, like 300 plus companies. So the key point here is you need to, every team is independent. So we only have like the horizontal layer is very small to do all the common functions, but every team is self-sustained. So we have our own engineering team, our GTM team, and they pretty much work in isolated mode. And the key is, having the right people at the top to drive it as well. They almost, I have like a CEO kind of a person responsible for running each one of them. And I have like a monthly once, we have like a product engineering meeting, and then the sales and marketing meeting. So I spend, very little time on the reporting and getting the data points I need. And personally, coming from a technical background, I get heavily involved on the engineering side. I give a lot of feedback to the teams. I experiment. I do, I with our own products continuously. Giving, my job is mainly, like mentoring people and making sure unblocking any bottlenecks what they have, and allowing them to do the job what they are good at, like without interfering too much on their day-to-day things, and making sure, like it's a single, it's a unified entity across the board. I think that is how my day operates. Yeah.
Right. The macro conditions right now are less than ideal. Right. In fact, I think Salesforce itself came out maybe a week back and said that we're not going to give a forecast. Right. I think first time in their history they've perhaps done that. They're saying that it will be difficult for us to give even a forecast. There's a lot of doomsday predictions. There's a lot of negativity, pessimism, and so on. In this kind of a scenario, you know, what are you doing differently during a slowdown? Are you investing a lot more in customer success? Are you scaling down some of the experiments? What are some of those things that you're doing differently during this slowdown that other founders can learn from?
Yeah, I think in our case we always being bootstrapped and not having external capital, we always conservative. Like you see problems only, like where a lot of companies where they got ample cash flow through external funding, and then they've been burning money at sometimes not in a responsible way as well, like throwing a lot of money on a lot of experiments and unrealistic salaries sometimes. That is where constituted to a lot of these problems. So in our case, like we I don't think it's so far it's a big impact for us internally. Like we are planned anyway to like keep going. And some of the things what we are doing is like to invest more on the product and engineering side, because that is something is evergreen, right? So when things slow down, maybe if you have enough capital to run you for a year or 2 years, then you need to focus your energy on what needs to be done when you come out of this period after a year or 2 years. So our principle is going to investing more on the product side of things, maturing the products. And the second thing is, as you said, investing on the customer success and retention side of things as well. It's very difficult if it get difficult to get new customers. The next big thing you can do is make sure you can retain your current customers, make them happy, so that you can carry on. So those are some of the things what we're doing. And we also openly commented, like we don't have any layoffs in plan, and we communicated internally as well, because we kind of prepared, and like we know exactly if things gets harder, what needs to be done for a couple of years period. Yeah.
Right. You are very passionate about developing the ecosystem in Coimbatore. And I think that's one thing that I'm excited about is also the fact that B2B SaaS can support multiple different ecosystems, right? I mean, outside of, let's say, a Bangalore or a, Bombay or a Delhi. If you look at Pune, for example, they have iCertis, HelpShift, Mindtickle, Dhruva, so many of these other companies that have come up in the last 10 years, right? Similarly, I think, Coimbatore, Jaipur, plenty of other places can also similarly develop these ecosystems as well. What are some things that you're doing in order to encourage this ecosystem and sort of build this out?
Yeah. Okay, I think right from day one, we were so passionate about building something in Coimbatore. I think even, I've mentioned in other interviews, like one of the common questions that come is, why did I choose Coimbatore? So yeah, I think there were initial struggles at the beginning days. The ecosystem is not there. Still, it's not super matured, because there are only a couple of SaaS companies and notable SaaS companies, and some of the young companies are coming at very early stages. So the talent pool is not there, and that so some of the things what we are trying to do is to sort out our engineering challenges. We run our internal training program, which we call Kovai Connect, and we hire people like interns or like straight out of university, and we conduct more like a internal university. There's a full time trainer, and then we train them in technologies what's relevant for us, and now we expanded that to GTM actions as well. Because a lot of times, it's a lot of things are coachable. Like sales, it's pretty simple, right? Like, okay, you're only going to repeat. It's more of a repetition rather than like a creative thinking, and so it's all coachable skills. So we are trying to build up that ecosystem, and the main thing is building the talent required. That is on the talent side. And also we are working closely with, for example, SaaS Boomi and those kind of initiatives to bring that ecosystem in Coimbatore. So we recently did some couple of playbooks kind of thing, educating the entrepreneurs, the local entrepreneurs, and we're trying to bring them all together. So there's a bunch of activities where we are doing, and I think in the next 5 or 10 years, you will see start seeing the new age companies coming out of tier 2 cities like Coimbatore, and it takes time, but I can clearly see that's slowly picking up.
Amazing, amazing. This has been a fascinating chat, Sarana. I think what you've built is really, really impressive. I think it's a model for others to emulate as well. Before we end this podcast, any books or other podcasts that you would recommend to our listeners?
Okay, books. I'm a big, I attribute a lot of my learnings through books. It's a lot of topics. Good to Great. I think Jim Collins is a classic book, and it's a personal MBA is another favorite book. In terms of podcast, I listen to Master of Scale, Reid Hoffman, and Saster, of course. A lot of Jensen Lemkin one. I watch quite a bit of that. Yeah, I don't think it's nothing particular. I don't really subscribe and go for it. Like a lot of times, I search and then, but I do consume a lot of content, podcast and YouTube mainly. Like it's amazing content these days in YouTube. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you again for making time in your day for this. This was really, really useful and insightful. And wish you all the best for everything that you have coming up.
Yeah. Thanks, Roshan. Thanks for having me on the show. Thank you.
Awesome. In the Park Avenue PowerPoint segment, we review some of the highlights of this conversation. On the nuances of selling to large enterprises, Sarvana says that even at a large enterprise, you are selling to some person, some human being. So make it relevant for them and solve their problem. Don't sell to enterprises as a monolith. On balancing customer satisfaction and product vision, he says when you're selling to an enterprise, it might be tempting to do everything they ask for, and you may not want to lose their business, which is fair, but then you should not ever get stuck selling or building a product for one person. So it's always better to move on rather than, waste time on that endeavor. On building a moat and staying ahead of competition, Sarvana says quality reflects everywhere. And product is perhaps 20% of the equation. You need to have an equally strong GTM, a strong brand, a great website, and so on and so forth. On some of the insights he's learned on the customer success front, Sarvana says a lot of the churn happens because you sold it to the wrong customer. So you need to check your sales and marketing at the top of the funnel, define your ICPs clearly, and only sell to them. On being an engineer who has managed to hire sales, customer success, support, etc., he says if you've done the job yourself, you're well aware of what is required, you know of the challenges, and you can ask the questions that really test a candidate's ability. And so he says, do the version one of whatever it is, and then figure how you can scale with other people. All right, folks, that's it for this episode of the Startup Operator podcast. If you found something of value, do share it with your fellow startup operators. Rate and review us on your favorite platforms so more people can discover us. And I'll see you again on another episode with another fantastic guest. See you soon.